Welcome to the Breaking Ground ORA podcast, and today we have Nadine McLennan who will be sharing her story with us. I am Joe Williams.
And I'm Mark Tenalia.
Nadine, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me here.
Why don't we just jump right into it? Nadine, why don't you share your story with us?
Quite a few years back, I was living in a community that I will not state the name at the moment, but for safety reason. But we were living in a community, and it's within the Jane and Finch area. And the reason why I moved to that community is I was thinking to give my children a better life. In the sense, I was going to university. And my travel was over an hour. And I thought, hey, York is just up the street. Why not move to this community? So that was one of the main goals of trying to have less travel time. Not knowing that moving to that community was going to do a 360-degree turn for my family and I. So we try to get along with everyone in the community. We don't know much people's name in the community. We just know the faces. And so on a bright Saturday morning, sunny Saturday morning, I got a wake-up call. And the wake-up call begins like this. I left my son at the time, he's around 14. I left him for the first time by himself because I normally take my daughter to dance class and my son to basketball in the afternoon. And for some reason that Saturday morning, my son said, Mom, is it okay if I stay and do my assignment before we go to basketball practice? I said, that's weird that you wanted to stay back this morning because you normally go with Mommy and your sister every Saturday. And he said, no, Mom, I just want to finish my homework. So I trusted my son, and my neighbors were very close with that neighbor. And so not too far into the dance, I got a phone call, and it was not a good one. And the phone call I got uprooted us. Within 3 weeks, we had to get out of that community. That's where life just changed. My son was targeted so many times, and it hit home because his mental health kicks in. He was in the hospital for months, and I remember my son telling me sometimes that, Mom, I felt like I'm in a dark hole, but I don't think I want to get out of the dark hole. And all I can remember saying to him, stay as long as you want in that dark hole. Mommy's there with you. I would go to the hospital sometimes, and I would see my son curled up underneath a table, laying on the cold floor, sleeping, and I would get so mad at the doctors and nurses and said, why is he on the cold floor? And they said, just leave him alone. If only you know that was his only few minutes of rest because he does not sleep. And again, I would just curl up beside him so when he returns, he see that Mommy was on the cold floor beside him. But I remember in all of this, I'm thinking when it first happened, I was given some counselor's number, and I said, okay, at least, I needed to take care of self-care for myself before I can take care of my children. But I got disappointed because the counselor was just not there to support. It was like a joke. It was like a game. And again, I felt frustrated. I felt like I was all alone, not knowing how to go about it. But I remember that in the beginning of everything, when I got to the scene, when I got the call and got to the scene back to my house, some officers were there. And I remember my knee just it just buckled like there was no life in me. And in the back of my mind, I closed my eyes and I said, no, but my son needs me. And I don't know, I felt like I gained strength within seconds. And the officers were there from that second, 31 Division. Every step of the way in the hospital, when he's out, when he's in school. And I never, ever can repay the officers. I know the officers rotated from 31 Division right now, but the good news about it is that they rotated and new ones came in the communities. near and far, my neighboring community, and they're doing just as much as good as the ones that assist me. And for that reason, I try to explain to parents and I try to explain to other youths. A lot of times we sit and we are quick to say officers or this and they're that. I have been on the school board as chair, several schools, because anywhere my children go to school, I try to be a part of it. And I see where parents would want me to rally to make sure that officers don't come into school. And I remember I said to a parent, you got the wrong parent, because I'm not going to be voting against them not being in the school. They needed to be in the school. And I reminded them, and I tried to bring in officers within the schools to do presentations. I try as a counselor in the schools to remind, the students, the teachers, we judge them based on their uniforms. And it's full time we stop doing that. Because I know that you have the females who have their husbands home, their children. They are daughters, they are mothers. You have the males, whichever gender we want to use right now, we have them who have other families out there. And a lot of times what we don't think, take a small moment to think. When they leave home every morning, that could be their final day with their families. But they do it for us. That's how I look at it.
Wow, Nadine, that is quite a story. So for our viewers, I'm just going to recap. You moved to the neighborhood, you're raising your 2 children, and then an incident happens that changes your life. Are we correct to assume that this incident had to do with violence?
Yes, it did. Had to do with violence. The unfortunate story of it, a life was taken, and the violence took place within the community, and it wasn't people from the community. And that was one of the things that hit me, that you start feeling safe within the communities. And a lot of time these things happen within the communities. It's strangers. So I have to remind, all of us as parents, just talk to your children. Know who you are friend with. Know who you're inviting within your space. Because, again, we have to put that trust in the officers. They're trusting us to come into our space to try to be there for us. They don't know nothing about us. They don't know what they're faced with when they come into our space. So we have to trust them. So we have to give them also that leverage of trust for them to come in and say, okay, we trust them to make us be safe. So it was a violence, yes.
And when you say the police officers were there for you from that moment on and beyond, could you tell us a little bit about how were they there for you?
Boy, they were like mentor. They were very much key listeners. I remember clearly I'm at the hospital with my son, and 2 officers would show up while I'm there laying, trying to figure where do I go from here, with a cup of tea, and some treats for me to eat. I remember officers showing up to say, okay, if you want to just take a quick minute to just take a breather. All I wanted to do was just a quick 2-second shower to revive myself. I got that through 31 Division. I remember, again, they paid such close attention to me and my family that I got a gift. And when I opened it, of course, it was every color nail polish you could think of was in that gift. Because they see, well, give her that moment to titivate herself, to dollop herself. They see I needed that. And I said, wow, are these officers? They go beyond. And I always said, I hope. And I remember the superintendent at the time at 31. I make sure go in and speak with him, with my family. And I said, at no given time, and please, I'm asking you, don't give your workers crap for helping us, excuse my French on the line here, for helping us going beyond, because the duty they're doing is above and beyond. So don't give them a hard time if you hear that they do something for a family that wasn't a part of their criteria. And it was well received.
Nadine, so when you see the NCOs, the neighborhood officers come through the neighborhood, how does that make you feel?
Safety. That what come to mind. Because when we moved to where we're at right now, I could not get my son to even go play basketball in the courtyard. I would have to normally take him to a further basketball court. My daughter would not even play at the playground. So I have to bring them further out. Now they're okay. She will say, okay, the officer's out there. Can I go? And I said, sure. And I would make sure go to one of the officers and said, how long are you going to be here? Because however long they're going to be there, that's when my daughter, she know that's her time. If they're leaving, she's coming in. In the summer, when they have summer program, as long as the officer's out there, it's okay. We go and sit for a little bit. Once they're leaving, we're leaving too. So it's safety. It brings safety for me, security.
Nadine, we have a tendency in this country, and particularly in this city, to view law enforcement with American tinted glasses. I just want to get this straight. So you live in a community where for your children, just to be safe and to go out and do the normal things that other normal kids do in this city, you have to first check with an officer.
Yes, and funny thing you say that, I remember making a statement a while back that there are bad cops. We have to be real about it. But we're not going to use the few bad cops out there to tend to turn the good ones ugly. No. Because give to Caesar what's due to Caesar. And we do have a lot of good cops. Here in Canada, here in Toronto, 31 Division, I'm telling you, they go above and beyond. I don't know one officer that I can say or heard of that have done something negative in the community. It's all positive. I do my research, not just the ones that I'm close to or know. By just coming in the community, I try to ask questions. Because when my son is driving, he's a young driver, I need to know if he's been stopped out there by an officer. Is he going to be dealt with fairly? And I always joke and said, if you get a 31 Division officer stopping you, make sure you have a coffee or something to say here. But yes.
Nadine, so now hearing your story and your lived experience, what would you say to those folks that say we should defund the police or reduce their budget? With your experience, what would you say to them?
I would say it's very unfortunate because at the end of the day, from what we see right now, you have 2 officers that have to cover probably 3, 4 communities. And I think the budget is needed because my current community that I'm in, the crime rate is not as high. So the officers are more in the neighboring community. They swing by to see and say hi and see how everything's going, but we really don't have them there as much as they would want to be. So the funding is very, very much important because a lot of youths are still being left out who the officers could reach. But because they're so limited within the space and the time that they get in the community. Because I know a lot in my current community, a lot of youths would be of great benefit if more officers were there.
With your experience in the community, how have you seen the interaction with the youth and the police?
They love the police officers. When they come, it's like, when kids get candy for Christmas. I just witnessed this past Christmas. A TTC bus came in full of gifts. And my aunt was visiting me. I have an older aunt that was visiting. And she stood there and she's like, wow. They were just all over the officers. The officers were just making themselves just free for all so the children could interact with them. The young and the old was just interacting, was just having a good time. And I think that is something that we have to say we are blessed and gifted to have that privilege. It's a privilege. So officers could come in and just be themselves in the community.
Nadine, your story is amazing. One of the things Mark and I always tell our clients here is that, when you reintegrate into the community, you must have a positive or a bare minimum, a neutral relationship with law enforcement. And to hear all the good work that these officers are doing in your community and the change that is brought is amazing. How are your children doing now?
They're doing awesome. They're doing amazing. My daughter and my son, doesn't matter what they're doing, My son have a book of one of the officers that the officer wrote. Officer Sean, he wrote a book. And I remember in the time of all what he was going through, he encouraged him to take on a lot of sports to, have his mind freed. And wrestling was one of them. And he went as far as to make sure my son have a wrestling shoes. That shoes can fit my son today, but they're not thrown out. He held on to it because to him, if you never see Officer Sean again, he has the book and that wrestling shoes to hold on to.
It's amazing.
My daughter was given a bike. When she reached an age where she won't be able to ride that bike, nobody will get that bike. Because it was given to her by 31 Division. That's relationship. And that's what left with these children. They are growing, but my son said what he would love more is to let other youths know that doesn't matter what you're faced with. Mental health issue or not, it's okay to let someone in, because he did let 31 Division in.
Nadine, there's not many people in this city that see this side of the police. The NCOs, the neighborhood NCOs from 31 Division, do they do this with other people within the community? Do they help everyone else?
Yes, they do. I've witnessed it. I make it my point of duty to invite officers into school to be a part of the community. I've seen where the school is going on field trips and they're afraid to leave up by certain hours of the morning. Now, the officers who were supposed to be, that I asked, they weren't on duty. Other officers took it upon themselves to come in, show up at the school before day in the morning, to see the bus loaded with these students and teachers, to let them feel safe. They did not leave until the bus left. They have gone into school and do presentations. They're doing an awesome job. And I've seen where the community is coming more alive because they're looking forward to see officers in. I'm not going to say it's all communities, some. And from what I see, a lot of times right now, even the youths, the male youths, I'm going to be using gender, they would more want to think, okay, and I'm going to use an example with this. A couple times my door was knocked on. Officers knock on it. And by the time they left, my door got knocked on again. I looked, I said, hi. Are you good? I said, yes. Oh, because 2 officers were knocking. I want to check because we got your back. I said, well, thank you for having my back, but they have your back too. So it's like they stood aside watching to see when officers come in because they're protecting their community, but I tried to make it clear to them. There's nothing bad for them to come in and make sure that we're safe. So when you see them coming, give that respect. You don't have to hide and think they're here to make trouble. No. But I appreciate the community was looking out for me. But I also have to let them know the officer's looking out for us. So yes, I see where other people are really getting the help.
Nadine, 2 things. If you had a message to tell to the public, what would you say to them about the officers? And the second question is, what message do you have for the officers?
My message for the public, give everyone a fair chance, include the officers. Please remove your mask off your face. See them as human beings. Blood runs through their veins just like us. That's out of our uniforms. The normal civilians. Just give them that fair chance. Respect them. Remember that at the end of the day, we need to say prayers for them every day because they're out there doing what they have to do to protect us. Again, just ignore what the bad has done and pray that the negativity don't override the positivity of what the police officers are doing. For the officers, keep doing what they're doing. I remember I went to a couple of the graduates when the police officers graduating. And I just wanted them to know that it's not a pretty world out there. The community is not as pretty as it is. Don't be fooled, but go with an open heart, open mind, that you're going to get what you give. And it's not going to be all the time you're going to get what you give, because you can give a lot more, receive less, but still have a hope in mind that whatever you do, you show love right across the board. Show fairness, show love even if it's not received. Just continue doing what you got to do. And I'm praying for you all, everyone that's on the line.
Nadine, I'm sure every police officer in this city will be very happy to hear your words. Mark and I always say it's unfortunate that all police officers are tainted, especially by the things that happen in America. And I always say Canada isn't America, and it's grossly unfair for us to judge our police officers by things that happen in the United States. So I would like to thank you on behalf of the team here for coming to share this very, very important story.
Well, thank you for having me here. And I just want to give a big, big, big shout out to Officer Nelson, Officer Dahlia, Officer Brian, Officer Sean. The list goes on, but they stood with us. And I know wherever they are, they're still doing what they were doing for us. I know they have other families back. So continue doing what they're doing. They left a big footprint to be covered, and just to let them know it's been covered. Thank you for having me here.
Excellent, Nadine. Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing, and thank you also, too, for your support with Toronto police officers.
Thank you, always. Thank you.